The greatest pirates weren't criminals, they were policy. Piracy seems to have existed since the beginning of seafaring. As early as the 14th century BC, the Egyptians left records of various peoples sailing from the eastern Mediterranean and raiding the Nile Delta. Much later records from ancient Greece also mention Phoenician and Greek pirates who engaged in kidnapping and slave trading. However, after the rise of Athens, the Greek cities formed an alliance to oppose the Persians. As a result, pirate activity in the region declined. Later, after a decisive victory over Carthage, the Republic of Rome expanded into the western Mediterranean. However, its fleet faced constant pirate attacks. The pirates were mainly Illyrians and Celts. In 75 BC, Julius Caesar, who was still a private soldier, was captured by Celt pirates in the Aegean Sea. He was held prisoner for 38 days. Later, he was released for a ransom. Having been freed, Caesar created a private military fleet and took revenge on his captors. In 67 BC, another group of Celts invaded Ostia, a few kilometers from Rome. This time, General Pompey was given full authority to fight piracy. He created a powerful military fleet and within 3 months put an end to piracy in the Mediterranean. For the next few centuries, piracy would go dormant. Various forms of piracy also existed in Northern Europe. According to legend, in 405, pirates in Great Britain kidnapped a 16-year-old boy named Patrick. He was sold into slavery and taken to Ireland. However, 6 years later, Patrick escaped. Returning to the island of Great Britain, he became a monk. However, in 432, Pope Celestine ordered him to return to Ireland and convert the local population to Christianity. Later, he became known as Saint Patrick. The day dedicated to him is celebrated in Ireland every year. In the 8th century, the Vikings ruled Northern Europe. Considered skilled sailors, the Vikings plundered the rich monasteries and ports of Europe and engaged in piracy. Over time, the Vikings settled in the conquered lands and switched from piracy to trade. The Danish kingdom defeated the Slavic pirates from the Baltic Sea and dominated the seas of Northern Europe. At the end of the 14th century, the Queen of Denmark and Norway, Margaret, wanted to seize the Swedish throne. Sweden did not have a sufficiently strong fleet. Therefore, she attacked merchant ships. In other words, Sweden hired privateers, or private shippers. They were supposed to attack Danish merchant ships and suppliers who were besieging Stockholm. But in 1395, a peace treaty was concluded, and 3 years later, the 3 northern kingdoms united under the name of the Kalmar Union. The Vitali brothers were deprived of the title of heretics, but continued their raids as pirates. Starting from Gotland, they attacked any merchant ships. In the future, a general hunt was declared against them, and all were destroyed. Farcer is a French expression, which also means infidel. Christians and Muslims fought each other in the Mediterranean. The Ottoman Empire recruited and armed them to attack the southern coasts of Europe in Christian ships. One of the recruited sailors, Aruj Chuj Baba, known today as Barbarossa, settled with his brothers on the island of Jerba. From here, he invaded Spain and Italy. He captured Catholics and sold them in the Ottoman market. In 1516, he killed the ruler of Algiers and seized power. However, a few years later, he died due to a Spanish attack. His brother, Hayreddin, adopted his title and the name Barbarossa. Hayreddin received additional military support from the Ottoman Empire. In return, he submitted to the empire. At this time, the Spaniards and Portuguese discovered and occupied new lands in America. From 1494, with the support of Rimpopes, the 2 countries divided the New World and its wealth. However, this division did not suit the other Catholic countries of Western Europe. Then, they hire him to undermine Spain's monopoly in the Caribbean. In 1522, the Frenchman Jean de Florc captured 2 Spanish caravels carrying valuable Aztec goods. In the following years, the Spanish faced further attacks from the French, English, and Dutch. Attacks were carried out even in the Caribbean, and ports and colonies were plundered. In the mid-15th century, the corsair François Leclerc, nicknamed the Wooden Leg, raided many of Spain's colonies and settled in St. Lucia to attack ships sailing nearby. Spain organized naval convoys to ensure the security of its trade routes. In 1577, the Englishman Francis Drake received a devastating commission from the Queen to plunder the Spanish ports of the Pacific Ocean in America. Having completed the mission, he returned to England with ships loaded with precious stones and metals. Asia was not spared from piracy either. Maritime trade in the Ming Empire was carefully regulated. The high taxes forced some merchants to engage in smuggling and piracy. They were joined by Japanese pirates who had many other interests. The pirates organized illegal trade and attacks. They traded Chinese saltpeter and Japanese gold matches, which were necessary for the production of perfume. In addition, they sold the silver of the Spaniards who traded with the Philippines to China. The Celts, who could not conquer Malta in the Mediterranean, were defeated by a Christian coalition in an important naval battle. The empire was now weakened at the sea and no longer had a navy capable of competing with the Europeans. The only remaining attacks against Christians were by Barbary pirates and North African corsairs. In 1609, King Philip III of Spain decreed the expulsion of the Moriscos, descendants of Muslims who had converted to Christianity during the Reconquista in the previous century. Many of them moved to Salé. Here, they engaged in piracy and attacked Europeans in the Atlantic Ocean. In 1618, in Lanzarote, Barbary pirates captured John Johns and sold him in Algeria. He converted to Islam, changed his name to Murad Rais, and began piracy. Moving to Salé, he quickly rose to high positions and eventually became Grand Admiral. In 1627, he organized an expedition to Iceland and sold the captured people into slavery. 4 years later, he organized another expedition to the south of Ireland, attacked the city of Baltimore, and took its people prisoner. In 1635, the Order of the Knights of Malta captured Murad Rais and sent him to Malta. In the Caribbean, pirates and corsairs had two main havens, Tortuga and Port Royal in Jamaica. France and England tolerated them. Why? Pirates contributed to the weakening of Spain and enriched both countries. Henry Morgan, the Viceroy of Jamaica, was famous for plundering many Spanish cities. Pirates were mainly people who were fleeing poverty and unemployment and were chasing freedom, wealth, and adventure. They followed rules that governed their lifestyle on board. The rules stipulated fair distribution of captured wealth and care for the injured. In addition, ship captains were democratically elected. But life on board was not to be desired. Conditions were harsh and life expectancy was very short. In the 1670s, Spain concluded peace treaties with England, France, and the United Provinces and acquired their territories in America. European countries were increasingly dependent on sugar plantations, so it was important to establish stability in the region. The need for privateers decreased. Now they were forbidden to attack the Spanish. With no work but still armed, many privateers turned to piracy. An earthquake in 1692 almost completely destroyed Port Royal. Most of the pirates in the Caribbean were in dire straits. The word privateer also means copper in English. In the same year, 1692, he enlisted Thomas Tunn to raid French ports in Africa. However, on the way, he changed his plans and became a pirate. He continued his journey to India. After sailing for several months, he entered the Red Sea, an important route for the Arab-Indian trade. He captured a Mughal ship loaded with valuables without much difficulty. Each of the crew members received a share equal to 30 years of revenue. When Thomas Chew returned to the Caribbean, news of the incident spread widely. As a result, many pirates set off for India. One of them, Henry Everest, who had served in the Royal Navy, arrived in India with a powerful pirate fleet and captured a Mughal merchant ship, which was a real treasure. In order to maintain the right to trade in India, England was forced to pay compensation to the Mughal emperor. The island of Sainte Marie near Madagascar was the main place of residence for pirates. Here, they stocked up on food and drinking water and sold the stolen wealth. They attacked Arab, Persian, Indian, Portuguese, English, French, and Indian merchants. Piracy posed a threat to trade routes. Stolen valuables in turn created competition for European markets as they appeared on American black markets. Piracy became a plague for European empires, and it became necessary to fight it. The British East India Company, or Ostrich Company, which operated in peace, armed its merchant ships and created protected trade convoys. In addition, Captain Almit is hired as a privateer to fight the pirates and the French in the Bahamas. However, after a long voyage, the expedition fails to capture any valuable treasure. The crew then persuades Whale to attack other merchant ships. Captain Whale turns from a pirate hunter to a pirate himself. Upon his return to New York, he is declared a traitor and executed. During the War of the Spanish Succession, Spain and France, which clashed with England, both sought to strengthen their power by recruiting pirates to privateer ships. From 1703 to 1706, French and Spanish fleets attacked Nassau, the capital of the Bahamas. The British abandoned the island to the pirates. Here, they founded a pirate republic. In 1713, at the end of the war, the privateers were unemployed and many of them returned to piracy. From there, they raided the Caribbean and North America. One of them, Edward Teach, nicknamed Blackbeard, captured a large French slave ship and carried out several raids in the Caribbean. A year later, he blockaded Charleston with 5 ships and captured ships that tried to leave the port. Great Britain wanted to put an end to piracy, which was damaging the economy of the region. He passed a law that allowed the execution of pirates. At the same time, he offers amnesty to those who abandon piracy. A military fleet sails to Nassau to announce this. Some pirates agree to the amnesty and recognize the authority of the new viceroy. Others sailed to other regions to try their luck. The Englishman Bartholomew Roberts attacks merchant ships on the triangular trade route. Roberts was famous for capturing hundreds of ships. Meanwhile, Christopher Condent, who had been at sea for 2 years, now attacks ships in the Indian Ocean. Condent, who is aware that the East India Company is looking for him, arrives at Bourbon Island and receives amnesty from the French governor. Another pirate who escaped from Nassau, Frenchman Olivier Levasseur, known as the Crow, captured a Portuguese ship carrying a former governor from the East Indies in 1721. The governor was captured with the wealth he had accumulated over the past 10 years. This was the largest fortune ever captured in the history of piracy. Levasseur settled in Marie, and from here he organized raids, including on French ships. However, he was captured in 1729. According to legend, the pirate, being hanged, threw a piece of paper with a cryptogram on it on the ground and shouted, "Whoever can find my wealth, let him find it." His treasure is still being sought. In the coming years, the results of the wars against piracy between Great Britain and France will begin to be felt. Piracy in the Indian Ocean and the Caribbean declined. In 1756, the 7 Years' War began. Great Britain, which dominated the seas with its powerful Royal Navy, won the war and seized many French colonies in North America and established itself in India. Later, during the French Revolutionary Wars, France lost several more naval battles. It again organized attacks on merchant ships. Robert Surkov's land became the Czar. The people settled on the French island and captured many British merchant ships. They even attacked the warships of the Ostrich Company. In the Mediterranean, Barbary pirates continued to seize ships. Tribute was levied on trade, but the new US President, Thomas Jefferson, did not want to pay taxes to pirates. This led to war. His ships would continue to patrol the seas until a peace treaty was signed. At the same time, the Napoleonic Wars were being waged in Europe. Napoleon ruled on land. The United Kingdom controlled the seas and expanded its colonial empire. It conquered the colonies of France and Holland. After Napoleon's defeat in 1815,
the island of Bourbon was returned to France. However, the island of Île-de-France remained under British control and was renamed Mauritius. That same year, the United States, which was still fighting pirates in the Mediterranean, sent a powerful naval fleet to Algeria. The United States negotiated a non-violent settlement and achieved an end to piracy. The following year, British and Dutch fleets bombarded the port of Algiers. The defeated Algerians put an end to the practice of enslaving Christians. This will accelerate the rise of piracy in the Mediterranean. The United Kingdom, which started the Industrial Revolution, will continue to fight piracy in order to expand its empire and ensure the security of trade routes.
In 1820, he launched a punitive expedition to the Persian Gulf. Although the expedition was officially aimed at combating pirates, in practice it also served to weaken its trading rivals. The victorious United Kingdom established control over the area, which became known as the Pirate Coast. 4 years later, the United Kingdom and the Netherlands agreed to jointly use the Straits of Malacca. Both countries undertook to combat pirates in the area. A conflict arose between the East India Company, which was involved in the illegal opium trade in the north, and China. The opium trade was weakening China. As a result of the war, Britain gained trading advantages in Chinese ports and established control over the island of Hong Kong. To ensure the security of the now vast empire, the United Kingdom used new ships powered by double-deckers. In 1855, when Chinese pirates captured British merchant ships near Hong Kong, 2 British and American steamships defeated 35 pirate ships. This time, the military capabilities of the great empires were superior to the pirates and began to completely suppress them. Piracy survived only in remote areas and in places where there was no participation of allied countries. In 1898, defeated Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States. They destroyed the pirates in the area for several years. After World War II, due to decolonization and political instability, piracy revived in some areas. In the southern Philippines, independence supporters commit acts of piracy against merchant and transport vessels and even against small towns and villages. The territories of the African king in Somalia are unstable and civil war begins. Foreign fishing vessels, taking advantage of the chaos, violate the borders of the Samanids, harming local fishermen. As a result, some of them become pirates who attack foreign fishing vessels and demand money in exchange for their release. Piracy spreads and begins to threaten trade between Asia and Europe. For this reason, the United Nations adopts a resolution calling on all countries to combat piracy. Piracy begins to flourish, including in the Samanid waters and in the Gulf of Guinea. These territories are rich in oil, but they improve the lifestyle of the local population. As a result, some groups, mainly Nigerians, have turned to piracy and are carrying out attacks further into the ocean. Boats traveling in the Caribbean are regularly attacked. Due to economic and political instability in Venezuela, many fishermen are forced to engage in piracy. Today, piracy is relatively rare. It occurs mainly in remote and poor regions where political instability prevails and near strategic